I'm Maddie. My pronouns are they, them, or she, her. I'm with Earth Ministry, Washington Interfaith Power and Light, and we are a statewide organization that works with faith communities and organizes faith communities for environmental justice. And that's what we'll be talking about tonight, and with some really serious fossil fuel environmental justice issues in Tacoma, where I know a lot of folks are from tonight. So one thing at Earth Ministry that we do at all of our events is we start with a land acknowledgement, because acknowledging the indigenous peoples of our land is really important, especially given the history of the Christian community in particular in genocide and just disregarding indigenous spirituality. And we'll start tonight with a land acknowledgement. So Earth Ministry, Washington Interfaith Power and Light, works within the unceded territories of Northwest Native nations. Our office is on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people past and present. Land acknowledgement is one way to resist erasure of indigenous histories, as well as to honor tribes in the land itself. And tonight we're going to be talking about the Puyallup Tribe's land. And I know lots of folks put in the chat that they know they live on the Puyallup Tribe's land. So thanks so much for doing that. All right, we got one person joining real quick, but I think I'll keep rolling. So I have some slides I want to share. So for folks who may not have heard of Earth Ministry or haven't worked with us before, this is our mission statement. Our goal is to transform faith into action for the well-being of both the environment and communities, because we know humans are not separate from nature. And what we also, and that takes the form of our faithful advocacy program, which we will be talking about a bit tonight in terms of how folks in Tacoma can get involved with fossil fuel expansion. But we also provide guidance to religious communities and houses of worship. Hi, Rachel, welcome. Sorry about the Zoom link. So glad you're here. And yeah, anything to do with faith and environment in Washington State, we want to focus on. Our office is in Seattle, but we do work statewide and have congregations and faith communities that we work with throughout the state. Okay. So here, now we'll talk about what everyone is here for tonight. So there's, as many of you probably know, there's always a lot going on in Tacoma in terms of fossil fuels. And we're just going to be talking about one of these things tonight, but I just wanted to give folks a bit of a context as to what else is going on and because it's all related at a certain extent. So one of the main fossil fuel facilities in Tacoma is the Seaport Sound Terminal, and that's just a bulk fossil fuel storage facility located on the tideflats. Last year, they applied for an expansion permit which would have allowed them to expand their tank capacity to hold fossil fuels. And what happened is the city of Tacoma said, after there was a lot of public outrage and folks just like you all advocating, and said, okay, if they want to expand, we need to study that. And so right now we're currently waiting for the release of the draft environmental impact statement for the Seaport Sound Terminal expansion. So we've been waiting a while for that. Not clear when it's going to come, but there will be opportunities to advocate when that environmental impact statement drops. And I won't spend more than that talking about it today. But since we're talking about fossil fuel expansion, this is one of the things we're trying to stop with the non-interim regulations. A lot of folks also probably know about the Tacoma LNG plant, which is a liquefied natural gas plant being built on the Puyallup Tribe's ancestral land and waters on the Tacoma tideflats. So currently what's happened is the project does have all of their permits to operate. But the Puyallup Tribe and some environmental partners appealed that decision. And those appeal hearings were held back in April. And it's really crunch time because the results of that appeal, the appeal decision is going to be released on or before October 25th. So that's coming up very soon. And I know a lot of us are sort of waiting with bated breath and praying for a good outcome for that. And I won't talk more about Tacoma LNG right now, but if folks have questions at the end, it's definitely all related for sure. And then the main thing that we'll be talking about today is the Tacoma Non-Interim Tideflats and Industrial Land Use Regulations, which is a mouthful for sure. Well, to shorten that, I will just be referring to them as the non-interim regulations. And what this is land use regulations that have the power to stop fossil fuel expansion in Tacoma. So, and the Tacoma City Council is considering these regulations like starting October 5th, so very soon. And this is what we're going to be talking about tonight because it's really crunch time. It's a really exciting moment we're at, but we also really need folks to advocate for the strongest possible policy. So that's sort of a summary of what's going on in Tacoma with all the various fossil fuel things. Okay, so now let's dig in a bit to the non-interim tideflats regulations. So I already mentioned some of these facilities, but there's three. It's good to know that there's three main fossil fuel facilities located on the tideflats. Seaport Sound Terminal, which has already applied to expand. The U.S. oil refinery, which a couple years ago was bought out by a company called Par Pacific. And there was rumors a couple years ago that they also wanted to expand. It's not clear to me how accurate that is as of this moment right now, because they haven't applied to expand yet. But there's lots of oil trains that come through Tacoma to go to that refinery and to Seaport Sound, I believe. And then of course, the newest fossil fuel facility on the tideflats is Tacoma LNG, which we hope the appeal will go the right way, and that facility will have to go back to the drawing boards in terms of an environmental impact statement. But in the case that doesn't happen, we also want to make sure they can't expand more than they have currently, if that makes sense. So land use regulations, while sometimes confusing and complicated, are in this case a really powerful way to protect Tacoma from fossil fuel expansion, and that's really what we're advocating for. For folks who have been involved in this fight, or like have heard about it, it's been going on several years now in Tacoma. So back in November 2017, the City Council passed the first version of the interim regulations. So it can be confusing because right now, today, what we're mostly talking about is the non-interim regulations. But in the past, and what's currently in place were interim regulations that had to be renewed by City Council every 6 months. So some of the folks here on this call today, and countless Tacoma community members would go down to City Council every 6 months when the renewal of this policy came up, and it's a long slog. We are all tired of doing that. And so the council now is doing a slightly more permanent version that they're considering, which is why they're called non-interim, meaning what the council votes on this month will not need to be renewed every 6 months, which is great, which is a great time saver for all of us. But that means we really need to make sure whatever is passed is really strong. So currently, the interim regulations don't, what the interim regulations do is stop brand new fossil fuel facilities from being constructed on the tideflats. They don't say anything about the expansion of existing facilities, which is a really big loophole. And like, as these interim regulations have been in place for the last several years, Seaport Sound has applied to expand. So like, this is a very clear illustration of why we need to close that loophole. So the mayor back in, gosh, April or something like that, tasked the Planning Commission with coming up with recommendations for these non-interim regulations. And the Planning Commission recommendations were initially very strong, and we were really excited about that. But then what happened is lots of industry talking points made their way to the council and said, whoa there, we need to slow down. Never mind that we had been already at this for a couple years at that point. So I just always laugh when they say, we need more time, because I'm like, okay, like, we've been doing this for years. It's been a while. And so those recommendations have recently gotten slightly watered down by the Infrastructure Planning and Sustainability Subcommittee or Committee of the City Council. So that's one thing that we're really going to be asking folks to advocate for, is the strongest possible regulations. And there's a couple of those amendments that were added in by the committee that I'll be talking about in a little bit. So what else do you need to know? Okay, some of this I already covered. Specifically in terms of the amendments, there's one amendment that it was essentially, I think, written by Puget Sound Energy. And it says that Tacoma LNG should be allowed to expand essentially without, like, be exempt from any regulations that pass that ban the expansion of existing fossil fuel facilities. And it's like a fairly complicated legal matter. I'm not a lawyer, but my best understanding of that amendment is that when Tacoma LNG was permitted, the large tank that holds liquefied natural gas, like, it was permitted to be able to hold more than what they're currently operating at. And so they would, if they wanted to add more LNG to the big old tank there, they would need to expand by adding more equipment to their facility, essentially. So like, what Puget Sound Energy is saying, and currently what the city of Tacoma is saying, and their attorney is saying, that we have to allow them to expand because they already have, they're permitted to hold more LNG than they can currently operate with their facility. Earth justice lawyers have written a very long legal document to the Tacoma City Council saying, like, actually, you don't have to allow that. Like, this is a legal gray area. So that's the number one thing we're going to be asking folks to advocate for is, you know, it seems like there's a lot of will, and the community has been asking to block this expansion loophole for a really, really long time. But if we pass non-interim regulations that say, okay, we've banned expansion of existing fossil fuel facilities, but there's this big loophole for Tacoma LNG, like, that doesn't really get at what the community is asking for. And that's a dangerous amendment that we're worried might slip through. So that's one thing I really wanted to convey to folks tonight. Okay. I think what I'm going to do now is just stop my screen share super quick and see if people have super quick specific questions about the non-interim regulations policy. Also, we should have time for questions at the end. The second part of the workshop is going to be talking about how how we can actually advocate for, now that you know about the non-interim regulations, like how we can advocate for the strongest possible policy. Any super quick questions right now?
I have a super quick question. This is Iris from Seattle. So are you suggesting, and maybe you're going to speak to this at the end, that when we give testimony at the City Council Tuesday morning, that we say that we want these regulations to include, not for the LNG plant, not to be able to add more LNG to their big tank?
Yes, that's essentially what we're asking. And later on, I'll share a draft comment letter that you can just plug your name into and send directly to City Council. So that will be coming in a minute. If there's no other questions, what I want to do.
I have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Marilyn.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So it's my understanding U.S. Oil initially said they weren't going to be exporting the LNG abroad, and now they want to do that. Is that correct?
Tacoma LNG, yeah. So my understanding is there's no talk of exporting LNG abroad, but what has happened in the past couple months is Tacoma LNG and Puget Sound Energy have signed a contract with to build a bunkering barge. So essentially they want to put a bunch of LNG on a barge from the facility that then they could take out into the Sound and Salish Sea and then fuel ships out there that wouldn't necessarily come and dock in Tacoma. My understanding is from the early days of the Tacoma LNG fight that they said, oh, we're not going to do bunkering with a barge. And like now they are. So that kind of speaks for itself. Okay, I think what I want to do now to save time is pass the mic really quick to Earth Ministry Washington Interfaith Power and Lights board member Rachel, who's here tonight. She's a proud Tacoma resident. We're so excited to have her here. And she's just going to share a little bit about why, like I've sort of talked about a lot of technical talking points because like land use policy is fairly technical. But ultimately at the end of the day, like we're here because we care about this as people of faith and like know that fossil fuel expansion is a like moral issue. Yeah, so I'll hand it over to Rachel.
Thanks. I'm so sorry I was a little bit late. So is there anybody else who's living in the city of Tacoma or right near Tacoma? I know I saw somebody in Des Moines. Okay, a couple of us. Okay, few of us. Great. Fantastic. Okay. So you all know, many of you have been here. If you don't live here, about our beautiful shorelines and port. And I fell in love with the city of Tacoma. I grew up in Everett, Washington. So I'm a Puget Sound born and raised, love the rain, love the mountains and the ferns. And so the landscape and the Salish Sea is particularly important to me personally. And I love bringing my kids down to the waterfront and down to Point Defiance Park, which I was there actually this morning in the beautiful rain. So the landscape is so important to me. It's important to me because it's beautiful, because it nourishes our souls and our spirits, and the fauna and flora of our land is so beautiful and wonderful to observe. So that's kind of my first round of important reasons why I care so much. But like many of you probably, my faith compels me to seek justice. And really, when I think about climate change, I think about testimonies from people from island nations. I think about people who live with the impacts of pollution from oil refineries. And I think about all of those who are most going to be impacted by rising seas and other negative effects of climate change. So climate change and the moral imperative to seek justice for all and to seek, especially to care for those who are most marginalized in our globe is really important to me. I've come to a pretty strong theology that stems from eco-feminist ideas about being part of an interdependent web of life and believing in a creator and source of life who seeks abundance and flourishing for us all. And so anything that causes people to suffer or causes people to experience, violence and injustice in the form of climate change is really against my hopes and visions for what God wants for us and for what we want for our community. So that's my kind of theological framework. And I really am so happy to be part of Earth Ministry and Washington Interfaith Power and Light that has worked so closely with the tribal communities as one of the most marginalized communities in our country and our world, and seeking their leadership and following their lead, especially on this particular topic. And the Puyallup Tribe has asked for there to be an end to this kind of fossil fuel buildup in the Salish Sea. They've seen the impacts of the pollution on the salmon and on the the interdependent web of all of the creation that depends on a healthy Salish Sea and healthy glaciers and rivers. And so I am, seeking to follow the leadership of the Puyallup Tribe and the community here, and they've asked us to join them in this fight against fossil fuels. And I just say, I am a parent, I have 2 small children, and even today I read something very disturbing about the life that's coming for them in terms of significant change to the climate. And so beyond just the enjoyment of the shorelines and the forests, the climate impacts that they are going to experience in their life is another part of the reason that I want to keep advocating to end our dependence on fossil fuels and all of their negative impacts on our communities. So those are kind of my top level experiences with why this is a moral imperative to me. And I've been advocating at the Tacoma City Council for this since that first round of non-interim regulations or interim regulations. And throughout this process, I can say more about this later when we talk specifically about advocacy, but I've become a lot more comfortable going to those meetings and calling up my council persons, and now count one of the former council members of kind of a friend and colleague who I had lots of conversations with around the first round of this. So I think it's really important to take action, and this is one of the things that I've spent the most advocacy time on in the last several years, just because it is so close and so real and so visible for me. I did do some work with Citizens for a Healthy Bay, which is the local group that's done a lot of really important work on this. And they have a Bay Patrol boat that they take out into the port. And so I don't know, we could follow up on this, but that was really impactful for me to take a ride on their Bay Patrol boat, and you can go with them. Sometimes they go out to look for significant pollution or other challenges that are happening out there, just to kind of check in on the port and the whole kind of waterfront area. And so you can ride along with them if it works out for them and for you to go along. And it's really pretty impressive to be at a boat level, a small boat level, looking up at the LNG facility and looking up at the big ships and things, because most of our view of the port is from the freeway when we're kind of far away and kind of looking down at it. So I think that was also a way that I kind of really connected to this issue more directly, and invite you to connect with me if you want to do something like that. We could follow up with Citizens for a Healthy Bay, because I think seeing the port at that level also gave me some kind of a different perspective and respect for the industry and economy that is dependent on our port, and to keep advocating for ways that we can find solutions that work for more people and, really do provide family wage jobs as the our opponents in this fight, I guess, like to say family wage jobs. They argue that there's not going to be any family wage jobs if we keep regulating fossil fuels. And my argument has always been and will continue to be that we can work together to find green jobs and clean jobs that actually are going to provide a much more sustainable, longer term family wage job for people in this area. So that's the other kind of layer of community concern that I have. I do know people who work in the port, and I think it's really important for us to keep those conversations going about how we work together to seek positive solutions that benefit our economy in a cleaner, greener way, instead of relying on kind of a dying fossil fuel industry to provide that kind of economic support. So that's a lot of things. I'll pause there.
Gosh, yeah, thank you, Rachel. Rachel is like a champion advocate at City Council, I have to say. Couple things you reminded me that I wanted to say, Rachel. So we do all of this, like, I know a lot about the non-interim regulations, but I'm not trained as a policy expert. And so we work in coalition in the to Protect the Tacoma Tideflats Coalition, which includes organizations like Citizens for a Healthy Bay that Rachel mentioned, and they have the policy experts that are able to, let us know what's needed and like what the jargon actually says and means. I talked a little bit about the Puyallup Tribe in terms of their years-long ongoing fight against Tacoma LNG, but like Rachel said, they've also been very clear that they want to see the strongest possible regulations, and they want to see a stop to fossil fuel expansion in the port. Gosh, I remember, I think it was April back. There's been so many like non-interim or interim regulations hearings that I have trouble keeping track of them all. But there was like some very powerful testimony from a couple of Puyallup tribal council members last year. And they really like reiterated again and again, like, this is our land and our waters, and we don't want to see expansion of fossil fuels there. So that's one thing I should have mentioned earlier that I wanted to make sure was reiterated. Okay, so for folks that do live in Tacoma, what I want to do is make sure everyone knows who their Tacoma City Council members are. And this isn't applicable to folks that live outside Tacoma, but I do think it's really important that people in Tacoma know who their council members are as we advocate for this. So this is a map that I took from the City Council website of the 5 districts in Tacoma. I'll say, like, there's also, I'll put a link in the chat that takes you to this map, so you can just plug in your address, which is super cool. And it will tell you who your council members are. So there's 5 districts, but then there's also, like, the mayor represents everyone. And there's also some at-large or citywide council members that aren't tied to any specific district. So, and over here, I've put the current targets of council members that we really need to be stronger on this issue in order to make sure that amendments that might actually end up allowing fossil fuel expansion don't get through. So Councilmember John Hines, who's in District 1, is a big target. Councilmember Keith Blocker, District 3, is also a big target. The mayor, of course, has a lot to do with this, and we want to keep advocating to her, but she's been, as time has gone on, I think has been a bit stronger on this issue than she used to be. And then Connor McCarthy is maybe, we're less likely to sway him on this issue. He's a citywide council member, so anyone in Tacoma could call him your council member. But it's also always important to reach folks that you might not be sure you can sway necessarily. Okay, I'm going to stop my share really quick so I can put that link in the chat so folks can look up who their council member is if need be. For the Tacoma folks here, Does everyone know who their district council member is and what district they live in? Yeah. Rachel knows. Okay. Excellent. Love it. Just curious for the Tacoma folks. Like I know Rachel lives in John Hines's district. Like curious to hear from other folks what district you're in. Pastor Nancy, what district are you in? Do you know?
Yeah, also John Hines.
Okay, well, he's a target, so that's great.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, and did you say you were in Tacoma as well?
Marilyn Kimmerling, yes, I'm in John Hines too.
Okay, well, we've got a big John Hines crew here today. That's great.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, what's your question?
Okay, so I go way back with this LNG business because I was one of the first 6 that locked down to the auger that was first drilling.
Oh my gosh, yes,
the
I thought your
landfill.
name looked very familiar.
Yeah, so we took it to court, 2 of us did, and we had a jury trial. And what came of that is that the city, according to the jury, they felt the city hadn't made its case that it even owned the land and not the Puyallup Tribe. So that kind of got the ball rolling. But my question to you, because I haven't heard recently about this, I know that the Puyallup Tribe was suing over this. Have they gone up to the federal level yet, since they're a sovereign tribe? Has it gone that high?
It has not, no. Currently, the appeal was heard. Yeah, and thanks for sharing your story, Marilyn. That's really powerful. I know currently the appeal was held by the Washington State Pollution Control Hearings Board, and the result of that is what we're waiting to hear. So that's a state level court that specializes in just hearing appeals for environmental, oops, I knocked my glasses off, environmental permits.
But since they're a sovereign nation, doesn't that have to be a federal court decision?
Well, so the way it works is they appealed it on the grounds that the science of the environmental impact statement that led to them issuing the clean air permit was garbage. So like essentially what the Puyallup Tribe and some environmental groups said, and actually the state attorney general echoed this in calling the environmental impact statement fictional.
I saw that, yeah.
Which is always a great quote to share with people. So like the EPA is a federal body, and then they designate permitting to the state, and then the State Department of Ecology, in this case, designated the state permitting to the city of Tacoma. So currently, like, even though the Puyallup Tribe is a sovereign nation and like treaty rights are supposed to be the law, like the supreme law of the land, that hasn't played out in this permitting case. And the tribe hasn't appealed on treaty rights grounds yet, I think because there's a lot at stake there. And so they really right now have just appealed on garbage science, essentially, is what they submitted the appeal on. Yeah, thanks for that question. Okay.
I saw that Mary had asked about which other people we should try if you're in the area but not in Tacoma. So I'm suggesting maybe we try to set up a group meeting with the mayor. I'm not sure if we can, or if that will be easy to get or not. But I think if it's some residents and some neighbors of the city, then I think she might be the right person to say, like, as a neighboring community member, I'm very concerned about this.
Yeah, and
she is very willing to meet with people. She's very accessible.
Oh, that's great to know. Yeah, I know that our friends at Citizens for a Healthy Bay have really been talking to the mayor a lot and getting her on board with all of this. And she was the one that actually first directed the Planning Commission to work on more permanent non-interim regulations because everyone was tired of going to City Council to talk about this every 6 months. Okay, I think I want to move on.
For those of you that don't live in Tacoma.
Yeah, Marilyn.
For those of you that don't live in those of you that don't live in Tacoma, part of the problem is we have what's known as a weak mayor system. And the person who has a lot of power within our city council is an unelected person. That's the city, what is she?
City
The city
manager.
attorney.
Yeah.
Manager.
City manager, yes. And she is not elected. And so she is not really responsible to the citizens of Tacoma. She's responsible to the city council only.
Mhm.
And that puts her in a position where she's not as reachable, and the city council defers to her.
Yeah, and I think there's lots, like Earth Ministry is a 501c3, so we don't work on electoral stuff, but we have many partners that have 501c4 arms that can work on electoral stuff. And that doesn't necessarily solve the city manager issue that you're talking about, Marilyn. But, you know, I think it'd be a whole lot easier to pass strong non-interim regulations if, you know, if the council looked different, etc. I think that's as much as I will say about that. Okay, so what I want to move on now to make sure we have time is I want to talk about what faithful advocacy looks like in the terms of this issue. So I will share some slides again. So Earth Ministry really believes in the power of storytelling. And we, you know, as people of faith, it's not our job to come with all of the facts. Like, I have shared a lot of facts with you all tonight, but you know, we want you to just know enough to be able to advocate on an issue and feel like you know what's going on. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think what in our experience sways elected officials is stories that stick in their head that really convey why you care about this as a person, as a community member, and maybe as a member of the faith community. Although I know that doesn't apply to necessarily everyone here tonight. The number one thing I always like to tell people is you don't have to be an expert to care about this. So like, you don't have to know every tiny little thing about this years-long complicated land use regulations process to be able to say, you know, fossil fuel expansion on the tideflats doesn't align with my values. Here's why. And Rachel like shared a story about her kids and like where she's coming at this from her theological perspective. And those things are often really powerful in public hearings and in testimony. I will say, you know, I was a science major in college. I love some numbers. I love the facts. That's all great. And we have coalition partners, like we have those experts and scientists that will come in and testify and say, you know, here's what future greenhouse gas emissions in Tacoma look like if we don't pass this policy, etc. But that's not necessarily our job to share that. Because real people are not policy experts, but real people are the experts of what's good for their community and what's good for, what's good for their community. So really, like everything I say tonight, I really want to convey that this process doesn't have to be scary and you don't need to be a policy expert to engage in this issue. And that there's a lot of people just like you that care a whole lot about this and are going to be at these October hearings that I'll share a little bit about in a bit. So this is just kind of a model for like how you can craft a story quickly if you've never done something like that before. So we always like to have folks start out with, who are you? And often, like, we ask folks to share what faith community they're a part of or what congregation they're a part of. And the reason for that is we know one single person can't speak for their whole community. But when you say, you know, my name is Rachel and I've attended Bethany Presbyterian Church for so many years, blah, 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 like the elected officials and council members immediately know, okay, like I might know this congregation that's an institution in our city, or like I know this person gathers with the whole community around shared values. So while you can't speak for your community, you are saying like, I'm a part of this community institution and we gather around shared values, and like those values have led me here today to say fossil fuel expansion is wrong. What do you value? I sort of just gave that example. And then what do you want? It's always important to like make sure you ask specifically for what you want instead of beating around the bush, or yeah, be really strong and come out and say, this is what I want. We want strong non-interim regulations because we want a healthy and sustainable future. Okay, so one thing I'm really excited to share tonight, and we're lucky because we even have the expert testifier here. So last year, Pastor Nancy Ferre Clark, who's here tonight, thank you so much, Pastor Nancy, for being here, recorded this example testimony video so that we can share with folks, because every 6 months we've been getting people to testify, and it's really helpful to have an example of what that might look like. So I'm going to play Pastor Nancy's example testimony just so folks can see what that's like. For reference, like Pastor Nancy was talking about the interim regulations, which are the former iteration of what we're talking about today, but a lot of the talking points are the same. So I will go ahead and share that.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Nancy Ferre Clark. I'm a recently retired United Methodist pastor, a proud resident of Tacoma, and a member of Earth Ministry. You may know that we recently celebrated the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. Marking that important date brought back memories for me of the first Earth Day during my junior year in high school, when I and my classmates were dismayed to learn that our planet was in serious trouble due to human intervention. We vowed that we could do better. I grew up on a dairy farm, so I have always loved nature, but I have also learned from my faith that environmental stewardship is not optional. God calls us to tend the magnificent creation which God has given us in order to preserve and protect it for the good of all people. This belief has been central to my life and ministry for many years. 50 years ago, I was hopeful about resolving the environmental crisis, but in many ways it has only worsened. Now we understand the devastating impact of greenhouse gas emissions, yet we continue to rely on dirty fuels, even as time is running out for saving our planet. The current COVID-19 crisis is showing us the inextricable connection of human health, the environment, and the economy. Fossil fuels clearly contribute to an increase in pollution and related health issues. Yet, to have a strong economy, we need healthy people. We must stop sacrificing the health of many for the wealth of a few. I believe we have a moral obligation to cut emissions now in order to create a just economy and a healthier world. Recalling my vow to do better many years ago, I am still hopeful that we can work together to resolve the climate crisis. As I look out on the beauty of Commencement Bay from my living room each day, I am grateful for the gift of this special place and the commitment many have made to protect it. I thank the City Council specifically for not allowing new fossil fuels in Tacoma while the tideflats sub-area plan is being developed. But we need stronger protections. I urge you to do better by strengthening the interim regulations to include a ban on expansion of the existing facilities. Your leadership can help save our planet and heal our community. Please do what is right to help provide a healthy and sustainable future for us and generations still to come. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Pastor Nancy. I am glad she let me use this for tonight, so thank you. And I can't believe we're still doing this, you know. Okay. So this is just sort of an analysis of like, what did Pastor Nancy talk about in her testimony? So who is she? She was really clear, like, okay, I'm a pastor. She really clearly laid out what she valued, and then weave some stories both from her childhood and experiences throughout, and then finished up with a really strong, like, clear ask of, okay, we really need to strengthen these regulations and close the expansion loophole. I think she made that really clear. Okay. I just wanted to give, I know we're running a little behind schedule, Rachel, but I was hoping Rachel could just give a quick, quick story of how it was to meet with her council member and talk about this, especially since she's been doing it over a long period of time. And to really like say and encourage you all, like, you all can do this. You don't have to be a community leader or an expert.
Yeah, I did meet with John Hines recently. It was just a couple weeks ago or a week ago. And it was supposed to be over Teams, but we couldn't make that work. So it was actually just a phone call. And it was fine. I think it was nice to meet him. You know, I am new to him. He's, you know, fairly new council member for us. And so it was my first time meeting with him. I went over some basics of, you know, what I care about and what's important to me. We also had heard from Citizens for a Healthy Bay that he's big on like the future. I forget what they said in the email, Maddie, but about, you know, a clean direction, a clean future for our city. And that's something I've been emphasizing in my testimonies too, is that as Seattle becomes a cleaner and cleaner port, I'm really worried that Tacoma becomes the dirty port that's nearby, that things can get dumped at because it's a less progressive city in some ways, and because we have a history of this bigger port, more kind of a working class city in some ways. So I'm really concerned that that pattern could continue. And I think that is a powerful message to send to the city council members, because they don't want to be seen like that. And he in particular has expressed a desire to be more kind of forward thinking. So I kind of emphasize that in particular. And he did come back with this question of like jobs, and that we do need to not just give kind of what he said, something like fluffy, unrealistic ideas about what the future might look like, but actually have to do some work to help come up with better, realistic jobs when I mentioned that topic. And I think that's a good point, but I think we can keep pushing them to figure that out too. You know, that's not something that individuals have to figure out for the city. But I think he was just kind of saying like, we have to be somewhat realistic. And some of his pushback was around some of the realistic, practical things he'd heard around, you know, how are we going to keep fueling the ships that are currently active, you know, the current shipping kind of structures we have here. And so I think anything we can do to say there's, you know, that we're looking towards future, and that we're seeking a cleaner, better future, and that these regulations will help us move in that direction instead of just getting kind of stuck on some of those details. But I did think it was good to push some of that. So I guess the comparisons helped a lot. The comparison to Seattle and the comparison, Maddie had shared with me some information about Vancouver being compared to, you know, that they've made some comparisons with some of the policies in Vancouver, but their situation is very different from ours. And so I just said that, like, without getting into any details, I just said, you know, it's really dangerous to compare our port with other ports, and to compare policies that work for one port that look different here because of our LNG facility is a very different reality here than there is in other ports. So if they're going to claim that the LNG facility is being used for small boats, or like, you know, for some of the local traffic or whatever, and Vancouver has a very small gas station for that, you know, it doesn't make sense. So we just have to be clear that the LNG and the particulars of our port are really important, and we want to push us in a better direction. But I'm really happy to meet with, like I said, with the mayor or with a group of people, if others want to meet with John Hines and they're nervous about doing that. I mean, if you want to go for it and do it on your own, that's awesome. But if you want to do it together with somebody, I'd be really happy to meet with him again. He said, well, now you have my cell phone number, so you can contact me again. So I'm happy to do so, and happy to set up another meeting with him and stay in touch, because I do think like kind of continued local pressure really has had an impact with other city council members that I've worked with. And once they get to know your face and your name, then they kind of have a sense of things, and we can go more in depth too sometimes, because we start to have that kind of a rapport and relationship. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to further meetings.
I should definitely know you, Rachel, after the number of times you've testified down there. Yeah, just really quick, I wanted to add, I see Barbara's hand is up, but I wanted to add one thing that Rachel reminded me of, is that there's like a lot of talk about jobs and like we need some fossil fuels, like those sort of talking points that are coming from folks opposed to strong regulations. And these regulations really are not that radical. Like they don't ban fossil fuels, they just ban the expansion. So everything that's already there, like this doesn't close the refinery, this doesn't close Tacoma LNG, like it's really not that radical. Like those folks are still going to have their jobs and can feed their families. And I think there's a bit of a misconception there with the way these land use regulations would work. Kind of like Rachel mentioned, like these are very common sense policies that have already been passed in other ports in Washington. And so like when they say we need more time to think about this, like policies like this have already been passed in Whatcom County just a few months ago, which was really exciting, Vancouver, Washington as well. And so like this is not some radical environmentalist agenda. Like this is very common sense land use policy that also makes economic sense, honestly, because the future of the economy is not fossil fuels. Okay, really, Barbara, what's your question? And then I'm going to put a link in the chat to a letter form that folks can use to send a quick message, and you can personalize it to the Tacoma City Council. Yeah, Barbara, what's your question?
Hi, hello everybody. I'm actually from Seattle, so I'm here in Seattle on Coast Salish area, Duwamish. And I just wanted to mention something that Rachel said, just kind of picked something up in me. You know, here in Seattle, I don't know how many other people here are in the Seattle area, but we're so close to Tacoma. We're just right down the corridor, and everything that happens in Tacoma affects people in Seattle too. And I am right now I'm involved with the 350 Seattle Education and Outreach team, and so we're kind of sometimes we integrate with the 350 Tacoma, and kind of enhance what each other's doing. So I really have a concern about, especially about human health, and you know, the situation that all the community is around the tide flats, around the LNG facility, and everything else that's going on there. And I also have a heart for the marine life that's going to be affected by more and more ships, more and more potential spills of oil and LNG gas. It would just be disastrous. I don't know if any of you heard about yet another orca whale has died who was a matriarch. So
yeah, I did hear that.
I think it was quite a number of months ago, there was a patriarch that they presumed dead because nobody had seen him for a while, so he's presumed dead. Then there was the orca that carried her dead baby around for a long time. And then I heard that she died as well. I don't know if that's true, if I heard wrong, but now we hear there was a very sort of a playful member that just recently died. I think it was a male. And then right on the tails of that male dying was the matriarch dying. So there's so few left. And I mean, they're just an example of the rest of the wildlife that is just becoming extinct, so endangered. by not only our climate crisis, but by the shipping industry and the cruise ship industry.
Yeah. And I
so
think
much,
like all
Mhm.
of, I think the wholesale industry is really affected by, you know, wonky land use regulations in Tacoma. And especially like what I think about, especially in line with the Tacoma LNG fight and the Puyallup Tribe is, you know, orcas need salmon, but the tribe also has protected federal treaty rights to be able to fish in their accustomed waters. And, you know, if there's no salmon, they can't do that. And if there's no salmon, there's no orcas. And so like, there's a lot there to think about. So thanks for bringing that up, Barbara. Okay, I want to share, did everyone see the form letter that I put into the chat? I hope everyone can fill that out and send it in. It will email automatically to the whole city council, which is exciting. What I want to talk about now, though, is getting folks to be involved in some more personalized testimony at hearings, sort of like what Rachel was talking about and Pastor Nancy's example testimony. So now it's your turn to advocate, now that we all know more about what's going on with fossil fuels in Tacoma. So I really encourage everyone to fill out that form that I just sent. You can personalize it. It's already pre-filled with our talking points about the amendment that would allow Tacoma LNG to expand, even if other facilities were blocked from expanding. But I also want to like really say that if you're feeling fired up about this, if you have some energy and time, it would be really, really wonderful and important, and I think impactful, if folks could testify at one of the online hearing or community forum opportunities for this. Like sending an email or letter is great, but if you have capacity, I would welcome you to testify at some of these dates and opportunities listed on the slide. And I am always happy to work one-on-one with people on their testimony. I love doing that. Yeah, and to help people tell their story about why they care about this so much. So the luck of this is that there is a plethora of opportunities. There truly is. So the very first, the council is they hold public hearings on specific pieces of legislation. And so the hearing for the non-interim regulations is going to be Tuesday, October 5th. So that's just in a couple days. Gosh, I can't believe it's October. And that'll be around 6 p.m. and it'll be a hearing on Zoom. And Rachel and I didn't talk about this, but Zoom hearings are honestly my favorite because people can't see your face. They can't see you reading your like testimony. So you don't have to like play to the room or be a public speaker in that regards. Like I like to sit here in my pajamas and read my testimony and sound awesome, but they can't see that I'm in my pajamas. Like that's the great thing about online hearings. There is that level of technology that's not necessarily accessible to everyone. But I know for Rachel, especially with little kids, it's been way easier for her to testify online than having to drive down to city council. And so like, that's sort of what the online hearings have been like. I found them really easy to like eat my dinner during, and then just unmute, like they'll unmute you when it's your turn to talk. And so if folks have availability on Tuesday, I'd love to, I'll be at that hearing online listening, and I'll be testifying for Earth Ministry. And so I'd love to, you know, organize folks to be there to testify as well. If you're busy Tuesday night, there are other opportunities like Tuesday. So there's a lot of Tuesdays. If you're generally busy on Tuesday nights, that's unfortunate. But there are these opportunities. The following Tuesday, 10/12, is an online community forum. So the Tacoma City Council does this about once or twice a month, where they open the mic up to folks to talk about anything that's on their mind or that they're concerned about and want to let the City Council know. So like folks will come to those meetings and talk about lots of different things, but we're really trying to get people to come and talk about fossil fuel expansion and healthy communities as part of that, so it stays in the council's mind. And then there's going to be on the city council agenda for the meeting on October 19th. That's going to be the first reading of the policy, they call it. And there may be amendments introduced that day. We're not sure. There could be amendments introduced throughout this process. But because it's on the agenda for that day, there will also be an opportunity for community members to comment on the non-interim regulations during that meeting as well. And then I should have put this on the slide, but I didn't because it's not technically a testimony opportunity, but we're expecting the final vote of the non-interim regulations to take place October 26th, which, if you remember, is the day after we're expecting the Tacoma LNG appeal decision to drop. So that's going to be a big week. I'm already trying to like emotionally prepare myself for that week. And so what I'm going to do is put a link to sign up to do testimony. And this isn't an official link. This is a spreadsheet I made so I can follow up with people who have an interest in testifying at any of those dates. So I'm going to put it in the chat. And even if you're not sure you'll be free, please, but you think there's a chance you may be interested in testifying, please like just jot your name down. If it doesn't work out, no worries, but I like this is just, and so I can fill you in on any updates that happened before Tuesday and can like help reach out and see like, what do you want to talk about? Do you like want me to help with testimony, etc. And I'll say that I imagine there's going to be a lot of people on Tuesday that want to speak because we've been doing this for a long time and this is a really critical moment. So I imagine they're going to limit testimony to 90 seconds to 2 minutes at the most. So if you're like writing testimony, etc., like they may cut you off if you're testifying, and that's okay. You can always submit it as a written comment and they will have to consider that with equal weight. I do think there's something special about testifying, like, and them hearing your voice and your story rather than just reading an email you send in. But they say that they do give those both equal weight. Okay, and then one last thing I wanted to share. I know we're a little over time, so thank you all for hanging with me. I get pretty fired up about fossil fuels and have a lot to say. So one thing we are asking Tacoma and Pierce County folks to do is to do what's called a photo petition. And some people may not have heard of this. Basically what it is instead of signing your name, you take a photo of yourself holding a sign that says something. So it's like a visual way to show your support of a campaign or issue through social media and photos. So I actually, oh gosh, I should have found this link to share, but I will share it in a follow-up email that I'll send to everyone. I did a workshop on this a couple weeks ago in St. Mark's Lutheran Church by the Narrows. I don't know if anyone here is from St. Mark's, but then like we talked about the non-interim regulations and why it's so important that folks plug in right now, because we're at a bit of a turning point and a crucial time. And folks like took pictures of themselves holding this sign that says Tacoma faith communities say no fossil fuel expansion on the tideflats. And then I posted them to social media, and that church is in John Hines's district. So I tagged him on Facebook, and I imagine he probably saw it or someone told him about it. And so this is like a fun social media way to also reach your legislator or say like, okay, like people care enough about this to post a picture of themselves on social media doing that. Let me add one that says Pierce County faith communities, because I know we have some folks in Pierce County, but not in Tacoma. And so if folks have capacity, please, and you have access to a printer, I know not everyone does, please print out the sign, or a fun thing that you can do is just like write your own message on a piece of paper or write the message that we've provided. And please email it to me. I'll put my email address in the chat. Always happy to connect with any of you really about Tacoma stuff, fossil fuel stuff, or about our work in general. Okay, I think that's everything I had. Yeah, I will hopefully be following up with folks that showed some interest in testifying. And even if you didn't put your name on the spreadsheet, I'll probably email you and see like, are you sure? Because this really is crunch time. And I think being at the online public hearings really makes me feel empowered, and just hearing all the voices of the community that care so much about this.